So I've mentioned a lot of my work that has to do around community building or nation building. The statistics about First Nations or Native American peoples are appalling. Not as bad as they once were, but suicide and chemical dependency and health disparities that are measured in some cases 10 times the national average. My theory was always that this had to do with cultural entropy, the energy that we spend not solving the problems that face us, but solving competing factors or overlapping factors. I knew early on that the key to bringing about some positive change in my community was helping to bring back some of the schematics, the heuristics, the blueprints that I had learned from various elders in my community. What I also understood was that not very many people get excited about looking at adjacency tables or data matrices or the other kinds of raw information that analysts use to make scientific statements about what's happening, what's going wrong, or hypothesizing about how we can make things better. I use Stata for statistical analysis, but unless you are really great at visualization, even that data, if it is very satisfying, still to the average person is not very interesting to look at. So I wanted a different way to be able to visualize what was happening in my community. So I coded a site called Wupnik Natanik, and in the Ktunaxa language that means new times. And as you can see, it was a social network based on our speech community. It looked and acted a lot like Facebook, many of the same functionalities. What it allowed me to do was to look at the interactions, these social relations between members of the speech community with very high units of analysis. I was able to see who was friending who was talking to other people in the network, but more importantly, I was able to gather some qualitative data about the important ideas that people were talking about. This picture is a really good example. It was from the 1940s, I believe, and it was a family from the St. Mary's Indian Reserve. People didn't just talk about who was there. They talked about their names in English, also their Indian names or names in the Ktunaxa language, and they also did some geolocation. One of the peaks in the background is Fisher Peak. People started to add all kinds of information. So we didn't just have simple status updates or statements like where they were going to dinner or what they were watching on TV. We started to see the emergence of information taxonomies. The primary research question here was if a community had their language forcibly replaced by English through the educational system, if they emerge from that trauma, would they be able to become complex again? Very early on, we started to see evidence of a complex community. In this picture, what you're looking at is a force-directed algorithm. The black dots are the people that are making the statements on the network. The red dots are the media that they have created to foster a sense of community. And the larger the black dot or the red dot, the more central the individuals were to the conversations. And in every complex system, we tend to find what's called a power law distribution, which means there are few highly connected, highly influential people, and then lots of people that are just involved maybe in the periphery. So you get a few people that are very active and a lot of people that are less active. This is a different algorithm. What this algorithm does is it places people with similar perspectives next to one another around the circle. You can see that the things that were uploaded or created in red are all placed next to each other, and the individuals along the edge of the circle, those are people that the more similar perspective they have, the closer they are. And again, In a complex system, we find what is called a small world architecture. And what that means is people are creating across the network. They are sharing disparate fields of information. They are looking beyond their own perspective, trying to find a more diverse array of information. This is another force-directed algorithm that shows a blog that is tied into those 5 or 6 large vertices in the middle. Those are the individuals that are most socially active, directly connected to blog B59, and that blog was intentionally created by one of the members of the network to connect other individuals to highly specified information. This information was regarding the family histories that go with various Indian names. That's evidence that one of the most important topics in this network was that dedication to a very diverse, very specified, nuanced context. That was very heterogeneous information, and it was able to connect disparate parts of that network. To me, this shows the important topics that act as fuel for that social gravity, holding people together. Random networks tend to look like spider webs, where you have to take several different webs to move around and cross an overall network. Complex networks, on the other hand, have these hubs that allow you to jump across the network in relatively small steps. If you think about the health of a network or the ability of a network to preserve itself, you have to have these small world structures. They allow you to share information throughout the network without having to take many small roads to get there. But to move beyond an academic argument and to apply this in a community setting, I decided to approach a number of families from my community that were working on their genealogical histories. And while it sounds like a relatively easy thing to do, to get a bunch of people that are related together to talk about how they're related, you have to understand that this community has been through a process of collective trauma. There are a number of academic researchers that have spent time in our community that have acted in a way that was not very ethical. They acted in a way that dispossessed the community members of their genograms, their family trees, and in some cases kept the information from individuals that have passed away and will not share that information with family members that live on today. We had everybody sit down at tables and we gave them large sheets of butcher paper, gave them pencils, and we said, please just draw what you think is important. We didn't expect individuals to stand at the wall looking at their genograms and sharing them. And what we really didn't expect was for individuals to start taking pens and pencils and drawing lines across maps to different parts of the network. What we ended up doing was we empowered people to find a new way to take control of their data and to do it in such a way that they were able to show they were from a very complex network. Where previous research had separated those individuals from their networks, from their context, from their family histories, we allowed them to reconnect themselves, to engage in those small world architectures. We allowed them to place themselves in that highly diverse, highly specialized cultural information that helped to make them who they were. And for me, that was probably the most rewarding research where I was able to apply theory in a very meaningful way.